Mike and Tim visit Earth.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 2, the reunion part 2 of Mike and Tim visit Earth.
Yeah, I guess we didn't think about how to start the show. You know, I was really excited last show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like skiing downhill 100 miles an hour kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Completely lost my center, but it was so exciting.
I feel like you thought you completely lost your center, but it came off as completely endearing, enthusiastic, and authentic. I think it was a lovely hour and change conversation.
Thank you. You know, the thing is, you can always get better. Right,
Yeah.
obviously. So I'm just speaking to the part where like I'm watching the video and I'm going, you know, Tim, you really have trouble staying with like the rhythm of the conversation. And whenever like there's a little bit of dead space or something, I think I panic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so let's go to the next topic. And you're like, wait, let's like finish what we were doing. So I appreciate you doing that, getting me. Gina does that for me when I do workshops around the world. Gina's always like, I go on tangents and she brings me back, so it's helpful.
I'm the exact same way, and also it's partly my fault because I'm the most interruptive ass on planet Earth, so I divert the initial thought into a tangent, and then it's your responsibility to somehow find the path.
But if you stay centered, right?
Yeah.
Like I kept telling myself, be seated. Just be seated in yourself, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
Then you can go with the punches, like the zigs and the zags. You can stick with it better. So anyway, I'm learning, and it's really fun to be doing this, you know, just to be like doing it live. Like, you know,
I wanted to be seated at your level. I felt very low. It felt like you were David Letterman, like perched on an 8-foot chair, and I'm your lowly guest. Did you ever see that, the Andy Kaufman special, when he was like doing, I think it may have been at actually Radio City or Carnegie Hall actually, but he did like a Christmas special, and he did a couple of like of spoofs, and one was him being Letterman and inviting a guest, and his chair was just like 8 feet in the air, and then the guest was sitting low, and he's like, "You're just a piece of shit."
That's
like,
the best.
Like just demeaning him, showing that there was an actual power dynamic.
Yeah.
It's great.
Wait, so that was a real thing though, like, and he was just picking up on it.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely he exaggerated the shit out of it.
Yeah,
but there
'cause
is
it's
some. I don't know if it was Letterman in particular, but there is definitely like some weird power dynamic of host to guest to like understand that you're a guest in my home, and this is just know your place. This is my show.
Do you ever watch late night shows? Or like you into that at all?
No, I mean I used to be, and I'm a Conan fan first and foremost.
Bang, me too, man. He's the best.
He's the best. And I don't listen to his podcast even enough, but every time I do, it puts me in such a great mood and reminds me of like why I even love comedy in the first place. Dude, some of my earliest comedy like consuming memories are watching Late Night with Conan O'Brien in like his first year at Mishu's house.
Right.
With me and him. He wasn't really all that into it, but I was super into it. His ferrets were fucking running all over the place. People are speaking Ukraine in the background. There's a wolf somewhere in the house. Were you privy to that?
I was there when those ferrets weren't treated so well.
Well, one climbed in my pants during a sleepover.
Ferrets are great. I've had 2 ferrets. Growing up, I don't know if were we friends?
Look like you've owned ferrets.
I've owned all kinds of animals. It was super fun. The downside of owning a ferret is apparently they all get like pancreatic cancer. Like at some point,
Really?
they're going to get this kind of cancer, and they lose all their hair. And it's just like, at the time I didn't have like an open heart, so my little ferret. This is something I still think about, and I have to feel it and grow. You know what I mean? So even bringing it up, I feel like I want to puke. I remember distinctly this moment where Tina, this white ferret. Remember, she was usually white ferrets are butterscotch, meaning they have like red eyes and they're like a golden belly and
like
whatever.
Banicula, the rabbit.
I couldn't say.
Another derailment. Go ahead.
It's all good. It's all good. So I just remembered. So when I got Tina, I loved her because she was all white with black. She was the most beautiful ferret ever, right?
Yeah.
So she lost all her hair, and so she was this skin thing.
Yeah.
Like it was, and she would come up to my and she would come up to my feet and look up, and she'd be like, "Love me."
That's like a crawling cock.
It was
that
so
is so disgusting.
and I was
just a pink-skinned vermin coming up to your leg.
But it's like you gotta love it anyway. It's your animal. That's what I'm saying. That's why it still kills me, man, to this day.
I know there is it's because I think ferrets are okay, but that's a step into like getting a bird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just a little bit too tumultuous for a household for me because like they do need space. They need to run around, so they have to go outside of their cage. And then when they run around, it's like you have fucking home meerkats and you have to just deal with the insanity.
Yeah.
And yeah, I woke up one time sleeping over Mishu's house with one of them like crawling up my leg. I thought I was being raped and I grabbed it in the middle of the night, took it out of my pants in a haze, threw it against the wall, and then it skittered out like in fucking Along Came Polly.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Yeah. You know, you're reminding me of another ferret event. When I was in 7th grade.
Yeah, a PE.
When I was in 7th
FE.
grade.
Damn it.
So here, wait until you listen to this story. I was in 7th grade. I can't remember. At some point I was dreaming and something was going on. And when I woke up, my ferret had squeezed itself out of the cage and it was licking my dick.
What the fuck? Your ferret's gay, dude?
While I was sleeping. I woke up and it was like, and I was like, I've never said this out loud to anybody before in my entire life. Because again, it's one of those moments where you're like, wait, like
do I love this? Should I pretend to be asleep for a little bit longer just to see how this goes?
It was so confusing.
Yeah.
Because I was in the dream, right? Something was happening.
Yeah.
I felt good. You know, it was like
Yeah.
something was, it was also 7th grade, right? So like super sensitive at the time. You know, I could like touch myself and I'd explode.
Immediately.
So anyway, that's my ferret. I didn't expect to share that today.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, Mishu's house in particular, and I've talked about this on Here's a Scenario, but like, I do want to see if it like, you know, dislodges some memories of your own.
Yeah.
Where he was the first house where it was like, it was awesome. His house was beautiful. His mom was so nice. His dad was so nice. His sisters, everybody was so welcoming. But then in the backyard, there was a living killing machine. They always had a wolf. Like, they just had wolves as dogs. It was always like a little bit, like a percentage, a little notch above above legal,
Yeah.
I'm sure. And like the dogs would be just waiting at the fence for you every time you'd come, and they'd lock eyes, meaningful eyes,
Yep.
and being like, the only thing keeping me from tearing your face off is this family, and I hope you know that when you walk inside. And it's like, I can't wait till my mom picks me up.
Yeah.
It sucks.
That sounds horrible, man. I think, like, how was it? Like, what kind of dog was it? You said it's
So one was called Foxy. One was called Wolfie.
Yeah.
The first one was literally called Wolfie.
Uh-huh.
It looked like a Siberian Husky, but it was very clearly too big to be a Siberian Husky.
okay.
Like, it had man paws, but they were covered in fur.
Okay.
It was nuts, dude.
Yeah.
And it literally was like, you know, that like, I just hawked up a goob in the back of my throat, but like that in the Sandlot. When when Hercules
Yep.
and he blows, you know, you hear that loud breath and the dust goes under the fence. That's what that dog was doing upon arrival. And the fence truly didn't look like it was like built to code, ready to like withstand any of it. It was horrifying. My mom wouldn't even, she'd make me get out of the car.
Okay.
So she wouldn't even walk me to the door.
Why would she do that?
I don't know. I'm 10 years old. She's like, if it gets up, one of us,
my
it's
God.
getting you, buddy. And
That's
I guess I
crazy.
got a front row seat to your demise.
That's crazy, man.
And then the second one was Foxy, which was a red wolf. Like, it truly had the same exact, you know, coloring as a fox, but it was, again, a giant thing. That one was a little bit more friendly, but still, every once in a while, it would, like, have the dog thing of, like, I'm here, unconditional love, I'm a dog, and then, like, it would just knowingly look at you to remind you that very little stands between you and the end of your life.
Did anything ever happen with these dogs?
No, I remember one time in particular, maybe like getting wet nose nuzzled in the dick, like upon arrival, like just like the dog, and you're like trying to push it off, but the dog is so fucking forceful that there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And like they're like, you know, it's fine, it's cool, the dog's friendly, and it's like in your asshole underneath your geesh.
Yeah.
And I just remember that, and there was no like specific events, but just like a general anxiety and fear.
It sounds understandably.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, it sure does. You know, switching topics, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just getting out of a really bad fight with Gina. like
today.
Like yeah, we finished it. We finished it around like maybe 11:30 this
Nice.
morning, and it started at maybe 7 o'clock last night. So it went through the whole night. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, I do.
nobody slept. It was like, in my mind, completely unresolvable. Somehow we have to get a third party involved because I'm not getting through to you, and you don't think I'm getting through to, and you don't think I'm, like, nobody's listening to each other. You know, like, I'm freaking out. Like, occasionally I do this thing where I literally I snap and I lose it, and then I catch it and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, in the middle, like, I must do that maybe like 10 to 15 times. But then I go, I'm sorry, and I go, see what I do? Take responsibility, apologize, see how humble I am? This is what I want for the family. This is what I want for the family. We're a team. We act with compassion. Everybody acts with, like, there's an intelligence in everybody's movement. We have to respect that and honor it, you know? And it's like, just listen.
I have the same. It's humble righteousness.
It's humble righteousness.
Yeah, it's being like, look at what a good guy I am.
I'm like screaming in her face. I'm the best teammate. I'm the best teammate. It's so fucked up, and I mean it, and I still mean it.
It's literally, it's Michael Jordan during The Last Dance reviewing footage of him just completely undressing one of his poor teammates and been like, "That's what it takes to win." I don't know what to tell you. I'm the best teammate that's ever lived. I got everything out of my players.
Yeah, and it's like, you just need to be okay with my screaming. Like, it's like, just know I'm a passionate guy. I get fired up, right? So you're just gonna have to, like, your hair blows back a little bit. You're just gonna have to, I'm never gonna hit you. You know. I'm not gonna hit you.
We're making progress.
But it hits a certain level. I actually had to have, like, a whole therapy session around this, where they're like, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for, and I'm like, I'm never gonna do that. Never. Like, when I'm in it, I am in it, man. And there's you can't, like, my heart gets so closed. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's just like, and it changes your consciousness. When your heart is closed, you're no longer a teammate. It's like a I'm right, you're wrong thing. And as soon like, I have like 10 to 15 notes in my phone from every time this has happened, to when the voice gets elevated, right? The conversation's over. Yeah. Like, it's not like you can't talk anymore. No one's going to listen. So like at least 15 hours of this was that. Yeah. And I know. Yeah. And I can't stop it anyway.
Well, the only thing so there is no stopping it. It's with us forever. The only thing that we can hope to do is rebound faster than we have in the past.
That's it.
So because I have the same exact feeling, I can actually feel the darkness take over my body. It's almost like a simian, like a fucking, like, venom kind of coursing over my skin, and I can feel myself becoming hardened, callous, and a bit evil. Yeah. And it, you know, like the fucking shadow people from Ghost when they take Willie away at the end. Nobody knows that. Who cares? But it does feel like just an overwhelming of, like, okay, we're in hell now, and I'm ready. I'm dressed for hell. Yeah. So let's fucking go.
Yeah, I fucking grew up with this. Let's do it. I mean, that's the major problem. You know, the fight that we had, though, it had such a nice conclusion. Meaning, we got to a place where I honestly didn't think we were ever going to get to. It's a fight that we've had since she lived in Piermont. So that's like 5 or 6 years ago when we were in Piermont together. Right. So, like, there's a thing that she does. I do something. There's a thing that she does. And then I lose my mind. I just lose my mind. And I realized the other day, because somebody was having a conversation with Gina, and they said something about it, about, like, defensiveness or whatever. And I woke up to it. I went, oh, so this is what's happening, right? So I started calling it out. I want to pull it back. I don't want to share too much.
I hear you. Like,
So how do I want to play
the
this?
Door. Also, keep going.
Yeah. So I don't know how to say it without sharing too much. But the point is, we got to a place where it's such a dramatic shift that I'm going to have to remind myself, like in meditation, I have to remind myself, things are different now. Yeah. She gets what you're saying, and I get what she's saying. And there's actually, in the middle of us, like, screaming at each other last night, it's mostly me screaming and her saying, why are you screaming? But it's like, you know, like, why we're doing that, you know? Like, at one point, she completely softened. Like, the whole room shifted. And she got it. Yeah. And I just, like, basically put the mic down, and I was like, I'm done yelling. It's good. It's like, I got through to you. And that's all I wanted. You know, it's like, but Tim, like, you don't have to do all that. But the fact is, I grew up. Am I talking too much? It's good.
No, because I was just going to also say that this sounds 100% like you're trying to talk to your mom.
So I grew up.
Yeah.
She's going to listen to this, so I'm going to be a little careful.
BB.
I grew up, she listened, and she was super young when they had me and my brother. They're like 20 years old, you know? And so I can imagine having kids and how fucked up I was back then. It was, the kids would be dead, let's be honest. So,
Some of them are.
So she was, hey-o. You know what's crazy too? With, you know, I have such spiritual friends and people that I really trust. They were like, that was a boy.
Oh no, that's
and
the
I'm
worst.
And I'm like, oh,
get out of here with that fucking shit. I don't want to hear it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, it sticks with you.
Yeah, dude. No.
So I grew up in an environment where parents were not taking my perception as like a 5 to 10 year old, 5 to 37 year old, parents were not taking responsibility for themselves. So I developed this response because I felt so trapped by it. I developed this response. When I call you out, if you don't admit that you did something or crossed the line or did something that hurt me, I'm going to destroy this house.
Yeah. I watched it happen.
So you've seen a few of yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it went from holes in the wall to breaking chairs. Once I launched the printer across the room and I ripped my hand open so bad. I was bleeding so bad.
How old were you? High school?
This was actually, so I was going to play college football. I was entering my second year, but I'd broken my back the year before.
Yeah.
So my mom hid the paperwork to say that I was going to show up for camp this year.
Oh, wow.
So I missed camp. And when I found that out, I think my head went 360 degrees, turned around. Like I just lost it. And I might.
What a kind of like, and it sucks because it's a noble thing almost that your mom did in the sense that she didn't want you to get further hurt.
Right.
It's a D3 sport, so she didn't want you to basically experience forever trauma or injury that could derail the rest of your life. So she probably actually saw through a lot of the shit that we weren't able to.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
The way in which she did it is just so classic. And also, you know, for you especially, that's the shit that you can't handle and I can't handle is when somebody is deliberately tricking or omitting information and acting as though we'll never find out.
Just
that's my huge trigger as well.
Yeah.
And I'll fucking set an entire building on fire.
And so like, you know, we all have like histories, right? And so this was a particular groove in my brain / nervous system that simply could not tolerate what was going on, right? When I talk about like what I do for a living, it's healing and awakening work, right? And simply put, healing to me means being able to tolerate what's happening in your life right now without falling asleep or into some historical memory-driven way of relating to the moment, which for me is flipping the fuck out, right?
Yeah.
So the awakening part, healing is, can I tolerate this, right? Gina does something where I perceive that she doesn't take responsibility for something. I lose my mind, I catch it, and then I have an opportunity based on who I am now to change my relationship to that. And it always starts with me taking responsibility, apologizing, and then just trying to talk it out. All right, how can we get through this? How can we relate to it differently? And we would just go around in circles, all you know.
Well, something you just kind of, what I like what you just said, and this is about like, this is my issue with a lot of, not necessarily even the healing world, because who knows if these people are authentic or whatever, but like the TikTok healing world, let's just say, is that like these people, similarly to somebody who is like 8 months sober and they're like, let me give you directions and advice on how this also can be your life. It's like they've acted as though they've healed, so it's over. They've done the healing. They've gone through the processes. So let me let you into how I fixed myself. And it's like, that's actually not what this is. It's an ongoing process. Your trauma, deep grooves of behavioral response, all that shit is likely embedded in you for the rest of your life. The only thing that healing is again, learning how to acknowledge it, change it in the moment, and the opportunity to rectify it, as opposed to continuing to live out the same fucking cycle. Right. Or at least that's what I've taken from it. And the things that just like, I get so bothered by absolutism, and that's all that there is right now. It's all hot takes. Everybody is black or white because the algorithm rewards divisiveness and debate and arguments. So everybody wants to take a side, even if they don't believe it, just so the other side can be represented in the comments and then therefore just drive up the video.
Yes.
So that shit it kind of negates the possibility of any of this, which is the gray conversation of like, hey man, it's something I still struggle with. I am healing. I am consistently on this path of bettering myself, but do I have emotional relapses? You're goddamn right.
Yeah, we fall asleep, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's amazing. How,
Yeah.
It's just like any kind of meditation practice. It's the same holographically or fractally, however you want to put it. It's the same thing that we're dealing with. There's something else that I wanted to say, but it matters so much, like the black and white thing. It's like, why don't people connect to what matters most is where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're coming from a place of like wanting to resolve this or understand the other side, all this kind of stuff, like nobody's, I don't know, at least online, it doesn't seem like people are coming from that place. Like they're not team players.
No, they're not interested in the message as much as they're interested in holding the teacher's edition of the textbook and marking your quiz incorrect. So they want to see what words you use. It doesn't even matter what you feel, what you think. If you don't use the correct fucking verbiage to express progressive ideals or whatever, they'll nail you to the stake because you got it wrong, because you said you misgendered by accident or did whatever. And it's like, but don't you understand where we're all where people are coming from, and that actually completely halts progress and discourse in its fucking tracks, and it's the absolute antithesis of coming together and finding common ground is to just check people's language right on the spot and make it like, you ever see that fucking, I mean, I've been talking about this in my act recently because like I feel politically homeless in the sense that like I know what I believe and it does not align with either party, especially the fringes, especially like the messaging from both parts. So it feels like I'm just completely fucking out to sea. and it's an odd feeling because you're just like, oh, no, I lost my train of thought. But either way, it's an odd feeling because it doesn't there's nobody that I can even talk to like this because all of the language is so combed through finally, and people are just, they want your fucking soundbite of what you believe, who you agree with, and then they match you to your team. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. I don't operate like that.
Well, people want to organize their lives. They want to like have things in a certain, it's an egoic thing to do, to actually, what the ego does is it takes pieces and parts of the world and it makes a whole picture out of it or a whole story out of it. So I get a piece of you, or maybe you just remind me of somebody that I know and I come to a conclusion about you and I freeze you and now I'm relating to you from that place. So like not only it's crazy, it's so disheartening at times to see how unwilling people are to be a part of this process that you're naming, right? You know what I mean? To have a certain kind of humility to say, let's work on this together, or like inquire. I guess what I'm saying is like, they don't really have a relationship with what you're really doing or who you really are. They're just freezing you. Yeah. That's.
But I think I was talking about this also, where it's like, for me, and I'm sure similarly for you with like what you've gone through, especially even in like the spiritual world, it's like comedy. And the way it's like made me a good person is because I just fucking sit in my own failure all the time. So I'm forced to reflect. I'm forced to look at the things that make me that aren't good, or just like, or did not deliver or whatever. And it's like other people socially, especially, it's like whenever they fail, they have a fucking phone to go to, and it completely just takes them out of the shame or out of the introspection, and it gives them a fucking nice little, oh, there's cats, and I never have to think about how I underdelivered.
And you can't grow. You can't grow that way. Like so much of like the growth.
That's a broadly sweeping generalization, but it is something, I think, to distracting yourself from your own failure that actually completely blows up any type of progression or growth.
I was watching the Jets Hard Knocks, and on one of the episodes, they had on the wall, no excuses, no explanations. And Gina and I were watching it, and I was like, you see that? She's a big Jets fan, you know what I mean? I'm like, this is what we need. If we want the championship, like this is what we need to do. It's so important, man. And with the phones, like you said, it's too easy for people to live in like a certain kind of denial. Like it doesn't even take so much of my healing work with people is getting them to feel safe enough and vulnerable enough to be able to get in touch with these aspects of themselves that simply aren't perfect. Right? It's just like, you just gotta give it a place. And if everybody can come from a place of we're all growing, we're all learning, we're all doing our best, then it's like, we're all, and then it's like the perfect environment for a child. For instance, there's this guy named Donald Winnicott. He revolutionized. Yeah, Don is I think I got a book back there, but he raised his whole philosophy in therapy was the good enough mother. So what he was saying was, there's a natural intelligence to people, to babies. He's talking about babies, but this goes for people as well. There's a natural intelligence that's coming forth that kind of knows what to do. It knows it doesn't necessarily, as a baby, knows what to connect to because they don't have that sort of cognition yet. Mm-hmm. But the baby knows enough in each stage. All you need to do is be like a guardian of its space. You need to be able to just be with it, allow it to express itself, correct it at times if it's having trouble. Mm-hmm. But there's this thing that life is always healing. Life is always moving in this direction. And there's so many times, if we can't make it conscious, if we can't be humble enough, we don't stand a chance.
No, and it's also, it's a little bit dangerous now, and not dangerous, but I don't know what it's going to result in, is that people are both expecting or demanding that everybody live like they're running for president. So you're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to say shit. You're not allowed to be honest about your mistakes. It's like, it's almost looked down upon to be open and authentic about the shit that you've gone through, because people are like, oh my God, what a piece of shit. Like, that's why did we talk about this on the last pod though? Sean Strickland, the MMA guy?
I don't remember actually. I don't think so.
He's the guy. He
probably means we did.
He fought Izzy Adesanya, and like he's like open and honest and maybe one of the most authentic people. He definitely says some wild fucked up shit. He definitely used to be a skinhead, which he's open about.
Oh, this is the press conference?
This is the press conference guy and all that stuff. But I'm not going to get into the specifics because I think we did talk about it, but just the fact that there is a guy that talked about what a market, like that is a true piece of shit, a skinhead, a bigot, somebody who is actively in that world saying that these cultures and races, etc., are beneath me, are lower, and I am whatever. That's like a true piece of shit. But then to acknowledge that that was a part of his past and that he's completely shed it, grown past it, and now this is where he's at, I think that's like fucking heroic.
I love it.
I love that shit because it's just... Nobody does it.
Yep.
Everybody pretends that they've always had the right opinion. They've always known what to think. It's like the first time they saw a trans person, they processed it, knew they were always a woman, and that's where it is. It's like, no, other people, especially those that have never even like lived in these or among these communities, it's like they don't know. They don't know what the fuck to do. We haven't even given them the opportunity to be good people, because the moment they express like, I don't know what that is, that's fucking scary or whatever, we pounce on them and label them basically a white supremacist or a bigot or whatever, when they actually could be not saved but educated or cultured or whatever. They're loved, because as soon as you shut them down and as soon as you label them and as soon as you say, like, it's like, who the fuck wants to learn from that? Who is like, oh, that's what I like. I like to be scolded into moral righteousness.
I want to feel like I'm an idiot for being wrong. Thanks a lot, It's ridiculous, but people do it. And anyway, I wanted to share that about Gina, because it's like a continental shift in our relationship. So it's really good.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, that's always a good thing, because I've done the same things. And I think we talked about this during Rabbit Hole a lot, because I first started going to therapy during Rabbit Hole, and so many of my issues were just like, anytime Nicole spoke to me, I just heard my mom like instantly would just get fucking hot under the collar, pissed off. No, I won't do the fucking dishes. Who are you to tell me to do the dishes? I'll do them whenever the fuck I want. I'm a grown ass man. Like that kind of nonsense. But ever since going to therapy and completely shattering that as like, not completely shattering it, doing as best as I can, but shattering and at least acknowledging what it was and what it is and where the anger comes from or where that feeling comes from, it's allowed me to catch it right on the spot, as opposed to, letting it linger and it becoming a colossal thing.
And I think what you're talking about is like one of the most important things that anybody can do, because, when I practice non-duality is like, it's the nature of the world. It's the nature of reality. It includes everything, right? One day, maybe we could talk more about non-duality. But the thing is, it means that we're so interconnected. like everything, even, I do meditations where we become awake to this empty space. It's actually full of relationships, and there's a ton of information available, and there's all this really cool stuff going on. But the point is, when you start to really realize, it's like, okay, so if everything is interconnected and everything is one, how does that actually change the way I live my life? How does that change the way I move through the world and how I interact with other beings? And for me, that's why when I saw it, when I saw the light and I woke up, I was like, oh, this is the most important thing that anybody can do, is work on their consciousness. And granted, no, I also believe there's plenty of other healings that need to be happen, and there's amazing work that's being done in the world, like on the physical level, to change things, to create groups to support people, to save the fucking rainforest, to all these kinds of, there's amazing people out there, that boots on the ground. But each person, I believe, needs to listen to their heart, as strange as that might is, gay as that is. I can't say that.
It isn't 2014 anymore.
So it's like
when gays didn't exist.
Dude, it's like it's hard to change the vocabulary.
Oh yeah,
I mean?
no. First of all, I have
especially sitting down with you, because it's just a groove. Like we talk, we bullshit all the time. So anyway, so this interconnectedness, right? To me, working on your consciousness is the most important thing, and trying to live in a place of loving awareness is like the most supreme creative act that anybody could ever do. So that's why I just wanted to say, that's why I do what I do, and I appreciate the work that you do on yourself. And I can see the way comedy has in many ways paralleled my own healing journey, because you're knowing yourself. You're working on yourself constantly, and you're tuning yourself, right? Ram Dass would say the highest, the true I'm not going to be able to say it. The highest artist is the true vehicle for the statement. That's what the highest artist is, the true vehicle for the statement. So the way I always interpreted that, it's like there's like this akashic thing that we're always swimming in. By the way, this book, The Self-Actualizing Cosmos, it's by this guy named Ervin Laszlo. He proves literally that the akashic is real, and we're always interacting with it in a particular way with our consciousness. This guy scientifically is proving it. There's a huge revolution going on in science right now. Cool. Very exciting.
Nice.
Very exciting. I'm always trying to prove what I'm exploring in spirituality. Say, look, scientists are doing the same thing, just on a different level. So anyway, it's the Akashic is always here, and we're always I lost it. It'll come back. It'll
definitely come back. The one thing that people were commenting on that we can get to while that stuff is swimming in the back of our brains is your illness, and just people had questions about what it, if you feel comfortable talking about it, obviously, but like, if you pinpointed it, what it was, the process of getting through it, etc. et al.
Right. So I went on. So it was the entire illness was about 6.5 years, right? I always wanted it to get to 7 years, because then I could say I'm a shaman. And I went through the shamanist, the 7-year shaman. No, it was like 6.5, 6.75. Dude, it's like fuck you.
That's exactly. This is like your spiritual version of Wolf of Wall Street, where he's just like, I made 49 million, which really fucking pissed me off, because if I got to 52, it would have been $1 million a week.
That's exactly, man. It's exactly.
Spiritually, you're like, I would have been a shaman, but now I'm just shy.
And I would have known that somewhere in the Akashic was this pattern that I lived into that was perfectly set up for me to become this amazing human being. But it's like, no, man. Like if you're sick for that long, everything falls apart and nobody helps you get it back together. So it's like you think you finally beat it, right? When I was over, it was like, oh my God, now my life sucks. Yeah, like, this is going to be really hard. And it was like, this is so unfair. It was so unfair. But all right, I'll say a little bit about it. So there was a couple years where I kept getting tested. I became an insomniac. I lost ultimately about 90 something pounds. I was down to about 160, which is what I was.
There was a while where you looked not good.
It was not, and it's crazy, guys. I look back at the pictures and I go, whoa, because I look like an anorexic.
Yeah.
And
no, it looked like your body was being eaten by something.
That's what it was. Yeah. The worst part about it was, so I was about 230 pounds, muscle, ripped, the whole deal. I went down to 160, and now I'm 230 pounds with none of the muscle. It's the worst. I told you this in passing. Like my biggest insecurity is my tits, right? Like I just want to have a perfect body, so I don't have to. I have chubby, like Chris DiStefano, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about it in the green room and everything. And like he's like, Tim, like, do you have it anyway? Like, it's good to
Puffy
know.
Nips.
And I just want it to go away because like growing up, kids were like, hey, bitch tits, and it's not. It sticks with you.
I might have had a little bit to do with that.
Yeah, and cheese boobs, people would call me. It was perfect. It was the perfect. It was the precise archer of pain. As
cheese boobs, I forgot about.
Yeah, I think he still calls me cheese boobs, and it's true. I've got cheesy boobs.
Yeah, I mean,
laugh it up, Mike.
I will not take part in the mockery, but I will laugh at it when it arrives. But yeah, and you did get rid of them for a little while in college too.
Totally, I did. Yeah, I succeeded.
But it also took like fucking Green Beret discipline with what you ate, worked out with, etc.
Working out twice a day, 6 days a week for years. That's crazy. I even spent my junior year in college, I didn't drink at all, which is crazy because I was a party animal, but I did do cocaine. It was a really weird time.
Dude, I saw a comic recently do a bump of coke, and I was like, oh, that's great. I was like, I thought you were sober. He's like, no, I quit drinking.
Yeah. It's a problem. Drinking's a problem.
It's like sick. Okay, so now just none of the sluggishness and all of the I'm gonna sell you this whole lot of cars energy.
Yes. So anyway, I'm lost at this point. So we talk. Anyway, so going back to the illness, right?
Yeah.
So
that's where we're at.
The cheese boobs apparently were my destiny. I can't escape it. It's just it is what it is at this point.
You gotta write your autobiography needs to be called Cheese Boobs: A Guide to Acceptance. I would fucking buy that in a heartbeat, dude.
Maybe I'll write like an essay to start. It's not a bad idea. I feel like I'm gonna throw up though. Because the cheese boobs thing, man, it cut deep. It cut like right into like how I like viewed myself, like my true self. Like it was just this cheese boob person.
Dairy tits.
Oh. So bad. So, so I'm at a point in my healing where my body's been so worn down that I can't do like cardio or anything. Or else like I get all these symptoms again, like I can't sleep, I get anxiety, my heart doesn't stop pounding. It's all these people. Some people don't believe that adrenal fatigue is a real thing. Whether it is or it isn't a real thing, I've gotten tested and they've shown that my adrenals are like flatlined. So they're just kind of like, they don't like work very well. And so it takes years to heal it. They said I was going to be healed by now, but it's not even close.
Is that from drugs? Like,
so my story is right because I was addicted to Adderall. I was like, I was just a
because I think I have said my mom has actually mentioned she's like maybe you have adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, I think I'm just tired from lack of sleep and all that shit. And
there's different levels of it. You can dip in and out of it. But the case was, so I started to get sick about 7 years ago, and I got tested for all these nothing was coming up. So I just kept pushing through it, you know. Eventually I got put on all this medication. I was taking Klonopin to sleep, which wasn't working. So instead I was just popping Klonopin all the time to try to deal with life. At some point I was just getting like maybe 2-3 hours a night, and it was torture. It was like the darkness that I was in, the difficulties that I was having. I was losing weight, and I had a permanent sinus infection, and there was just.
Is that why you wore the headband?
I wore a bandana for like 5 years because I needed. I went to sleep with that thing on because I needed constant pressure on my head because I had such headaches. And like something was happening, like something was like eating me from the inside out. Eventually I paid like $1 million. I used all of my savings. I had nothing left. I had to ask for financial help from my dad and stuff, and my mom and my grandpa and anybody that would help. I was like, help me, please. I'm dying. I don't know what's wrong. I finally got hooked up with this guy, Dr. Morrison, in the city. And I came from Jason Schulman, my teacher, the guy who created all this work.
Tiger Schulman's cousin.
He was like Tiger Schulman. You know him, yeah. he hooked me up with Dr. Morrison because apparently you need to wait like 4 years to see him. He's one of those guys. So he gets me in. At first, he thought it was from concussions because I had all the symptoms of whatever that is called, CTE, right?
Oh man,
so that's
probably still part of,
because I've had probably 4 or 5 pretty solid concussions.
So you know what's scary is, and again, this is like TikTok education, so who fucking knows? But it's like, you know, somebody, I forget who was being interviewed, but it was a football player, and they're like, how many concussions have you had? And they're like, I've had about 4 to 5 throughout my career. And the guy goes, try 4,000 to 5,000. And he's like, what? And it's like, yeah, every time that you came up and you like shook it off, or, you know, brief stars or whatever, just even felt discombobulated, that's a mini concussion. So all of those things add up. I mean, football in particular, like the constant contact and stuff, even when you're not hitting your head, it's still jostling your head and your brain is still shaking inside of your skull. Yeah. And your brain is making contact with the bone, which is by definition apparently a concussion. So it's like that stuff happens fucking constantly. So both of us, you in particular, because I only played for 1 year. Yeah. But I mean, football for real. It's like I used to have a joke about it that it didn't work because it's just not a joke. It's a good point. But I was like, CTE doesn't start the moment you get drafted into the NFL. Do you know there's a lot of plumbers out there that were an undersized middle linebacker in high school that murdered their family and didn't get the press?
And at the time, right? Because there was like really nobody.
Good bit, right, guys?
Love it, man. That's your closer.
Dude, people were just like, okay, we love football. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, man. And, you know, back then, nobody knew about this. So my philosophy was, I'm going to outwork anybody, and I'm going to out-hit anybody because it's just pain, and I'll be fine.
Yes.
So it was like hit people as hard as you can, and we have pads on, so it allowed us to really unleash hell, you know? And I mean, there were times when I remember getting hit. Sometimes I didn't even feel it.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at lights in the sky, and then I realized that, a 300-pound black tackle just threw me through the sky.
Yeah.
You know, anyway, so...
No, but it's like, it's the same as like taking... Like Wendell in Varsity Blues, right? Getting a shot in his knee so he can play. Tackling in pads is basically playing on an injury with painkillers.
Yeah.
Because it does not allow you the truth of the impact that you're taking.
Yeah, it's different.
It's a little bit of a lie.
It's football, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's a different thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
I hope I said black. Can you say black?
Yeah, I mean, you were describing them.
Yeah, it was not. It was the Nyack. I remember exactly who it was.
You didn't say he shouldn't have been on the field with us.
We shouldn't have been on the field with them.
No,
let's be honest.
No, we should not have.
Let's be honest. So, okay, where was I with my illness? So, and let's go back to, so it was a couple years in, right?
He said it may be concussions.
Dr. Morrison, right?
Yeah.
He said it may be concussions. And then eventually I tested positive for Lyme disease. So then there was that. And because my body, they did all these tests, my body was so run down, I couldn't take any of the hardcore medications or any antibiotics or something. So I was doing the blood spinning.
Can I say for a second? Because I both an apology and an acknowledgement is that, like, when you were telling me Lyme, I was like, bullshit or whatever, because at that time, so many fucking celebrities were coming out with the reason why they're exhausted is because they had Lyme. Like, Lindsay Lohan said it, Bieber said it. Like, all these people that were just very clearly doing cocaine and working really hard were saying, like, I have Lyme disease, I'm losing weight, I can't do this and that. And it's like, so I just kind of unfairly lumped you into that shit, and especially because you were in the spirituality world, and I didn't give it a fair chance, and I apologize for that. And also, it makes the most sense in the world that you had Lyme disease because you lived in the woods. We live in Rockland County, New York. If you look it up, it is the Lyme disease capital of the world. No shit.
And I spent a summer sleeping in the woods. Lo and behold, that summer I got sick for like 11, 12 days, and I didn't know what the deal was. I was typing online. Maybe the CIA kind of figured out that we're onto something, and they drugged my drink, you know. And I was drinking like marijuana tea all the time. I was like, I'm having a great time being sick.
They sent a Manchurian candidate tick to get me.
And I remember that time because it was so confusing. But anyway, how are we doing on time?
We're good.
So Dr. Morrison gets me the Lyme disease. I start getting treatment for it. Nothing really helped. And there was a lot of craziness because at the time I was living with Gina. Gina was like just kind of taking care of me. Literally, she was making me meals because there were times where I couldn't get out of bed. I was actually in bed for a couple of years at one point. I would go down to the couch or something. Every now and then I'd go outside for a little walk, but I literally couldn't take care of myself. At one point, a couple people came in, Jason Schulman, my father, some other people, and they said, Tim, you are too sick at this point to even make decisions for yourself, and we're taking over. Like that's how it got that bad.
You almost got 5150'd?
What's it? Oh, yeah, that's
or
what
conservatorship or
yeah,
something.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I don't know if they were like, I was open to it because I was like, yo, I can't even think anymore. Because what happened was, I left. Eventually, I said, Gina and I were. It was too hard for me to live with other people. To be honest, living at even Gina was amazing and all that. So I went to my grandpa's the first time. And when I went to my grandpa's the first time, I slept in the living room, and for something happened where I got so sick there that I had to choose: was I going to do change my cat's water bowl today, or was I going to feed myself today? Because I couldn't do both.
Yeah.
And I needed to take care of my cats, you know. And remember, Gina came over at one time. She looked at me and she said, "This is the worst I've ever seen you. Something has to change." So I got tested, and I was sleeping in black mold.
Oh my God.
And it turns out that black mold and Lyme are like the perfect wedding. So the mold and the Lyme got into my brain, and it made me a little bit, I got diagnosed with brain on fire.
Yeah, I remember you sent me that movie, right?
Yeah, and it's basically, you lose it. You're losing it. And I did. I was like, there were a couple months where, it was just, there was nobody. I realized at one point, I went, nobody is ever going to understand what I'm going through.
No.
And it made me so much more intimate with life, to be honest, with God, with whatever God is, with my God. And I was like, wow. So it's only me and you, whatever you are, this all-inclusive intelligence, this Akashic that includes all that, whatever that is, somehow you know how much I've suffered. Something knows, And I remember there was a moment where I got really into saints. And I was like, I just need comfort from saints. So I started trying to read these books, or listening mostly on Audible of Hindu saints and all these other saints. And I just love the idea of this unconditional love, bhakti yoga, which is devotional yoga, just living in love and service to people and to God. And I really love that. And then I was like, all right, I really want to explore Christian saints. I've never really done that before. And I was looking at all these different books that I could get. And I was like, no, there's something. I don't want to do St. Francis. I don't want to do Mother Teresa. There's something going on here. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to buy the book tomorrow. I'm going to go to sleep tonight, and I'm going to ask for help. I go to sleep that night, and I have this dream where this guy comes up to me, and he has 2 white huskies, and he says, Tim, you need to understand that your grandmother loves your grandfather very much. You need to know that the neighbor is going to take care of the driveway with the snow this winter, and you need to know that I'm watching over your emotional state right now. And he left, and I woke up, and I said that it was it was one of those dreams that felt.
Did he have any kind of resemblance to anything familiar?
Yes. Okay. So then the next day, the first book that popped up was a book about St. Paul, and I went, that was St. Paul.
That's cool.
It was very cool, and I became like a devotee from then on.
Timothy Paul.
I read. Yes, there was a really. That's my middle name for anybody that didn't get that. But there was something really. It was something. It was really special. I needed that.
Yeah.
And so I remember I even looked it up at the time. There was something about the 2 huskies coming. Like all of it was very symbolic, and at the time it was like, wow, there really is an intelligence because I believe that we're so connected to God that there's an exchange that's going on all the time. So as you give, you really do receive. So there is something that can respond. And to me, that was one of those moments where it was like, I am being supported through this. It was huge. It was huge.
And also, because I'm open to all possibilities, obviously, and I've gone with the external God idea, and then I've also gone with like the intergalactic God idea, where it's also like saying that could have represented you showing up for yourself, like you actually saying like, hey man, I got you. I'm your middle name, I'm your namesake, you have the power within yourself, and I'm going to guide you. And it's some sort of internal voice of your own strength that fucking peeked through that dark bullshit and let you know that like, hey, we're good, we'll make it through.
I totally get and respect that point of view. When people tell me that about my dreams with my brother, I want to tear their head off. Not anymore. You know, I used to back in the day because I wanted people to understand so much. But I do understand, right? Every time you have a dream, I'd say most of the time, everything you're experiencing in the dream is some aspect of your consciousness that's mirroring something or telling you something. You know, your subconscious is coming forward in some trippy ass way, right? Yeah. I do believe most of the time that's it. But then there are these moments, there are these dreams or experiences. I don't know if sometimes I can even call it a dream, but it has a quality that's different. It's hyper realistic. It's crystal clear. And there's oftentimes it's psychic communication instead of talking. There's all these things that happen that have caused me to categorize this as a separate consciousness experience. It's a separate event than a dream. So I just wanted to mention that too.
And I've had those events too, like where I've
with
had
deceased relatives, I'm assuming.
Yes. I mean, with Pup Up in particular, and I haven't had a dream about him in a while, which bums me out a little bit. It makes me feel like I'm losing my connection, but I don't think that's it. I'm actually just refocusing the connection into my son, and it's a completely just different circumstance. But one of the last dreams that I had with him was psychic communication. We saw him. I heard words. I never once said them. I heard words. We said things back and forth to each other without moving our mouths, without anything. And it all happened in a hug. And I woke up hysterically crying.
Boom. What a healing, man. What a healing. Right. Because that, in a sense, that connects you to something. Like it opens your heart. Right. How could it not open your heart?
Open Heart Army.
By the way, open heart. Yeah. And I wonder, anyway, I'm just going to say this. The guy, the neighbor, the next day came over and said, I'm going to, he had a plow, basically. And he said he was going to do it. So that to me, I forgot to mention that. That to me, like, anchored in, and I was like, wow, something is happening here, you know? So, okay, so where was I?
You're laying in black mold.
Laying in black, right. So they get me out of there. So now I'm back in Gina's house, right? And we take care of the mold. We take care of everything, whatever. And then I get back into my grandpa's house. And that's when it took a couple years. That was like a couple years of silence. And just kind of working through my stuff and taking care of myself and slowly getting better each day, even though we didn't know what was working and what wasn't working. It was just, you know, a tremendous amount of detoxification, watching my diet and whatever. But that's ultimately, I think, all that I you know, want to share about it. You know, if other stuff comes up, you know, it'll come up. But
was there anything in particular though that because, you know, obviously it's kind of a combination of things just to get back to right. But was there anything in particular, either meditative, diet-wise, spiritual-wise, or whatever, that helped kind of put you back on the road, or at least motivate you to want to get better, whereas before you felt like all was lost?
Well, you know, there was it was a huge psychological journey to come out of despair, right? And despair meaning hopelessness, right? Like, what's the point? And I remember, I mean, because I did healing sessions every week throughout this whole thing, and I still showed up for all my spiritual work, except I would either sleep through it, like these long, you know, like from 9 a.m. to 4:30, we do these long spiritual days with lots of teachings. I would just lie there, you know, and even if it was in person, I would just lie there and sleep and listen, you know. So, wait, bring me back.
So what? It's just anything that you were, you helped get you back on.
So that always kept me anchored into something that I knew loved me.
Sure.
Like these
that
people,
was your totem.
There's people, yes. I knew they loved me. I knew I was supported. And I knew Jason Schulman's journey, which was a great blessing because he is a shaman. And he went through a 7-year illness with Lyme disease before they knew what Lyme disease was. And he had very much the same experiences that I had. So I was lucky enough to be in contact with him the whole time. And he's a very special guy. Yeah. He's one of these, I mean, he has essentially what I would consider superpowers. Yeah. He's one of these guys, he can look at you and he can see if there's a bone that's inflamed. He can, what's up with your liver. Like
he just looks at me and he's like, you have an erection.
He's a human, but he would love you for it. It's all good. It would be okay. It's you know, and so he has these powers, and so he really helped identify what I needed. So the point was, I had these wonderful helpers all throughout, the teachers of a Society of Souls, the people that are in that community, and for some reason, that's what I was connected to. And something happened with my friends, something psychologically, where I felt like it was like everybody hated me, or it was like nobody understood what was going on, and they think it was just evil, bad stuff. Yeah. And that's why when we did our first show and we were able to talk that out a little bit, oh God, what a healing that was. No, seriously. And you saying what you just said about the Lyme disease, you know, that's a huge healing for me, because it was like life is fucked up, man.
Yeah.
We didn't know what was going on. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was just craziness for years and years and years. And to be able to come out of it and work through all the different psychological stages of like despair, and then using this really interesting healing modality called logosynthesis. I would do like, it's healing with words, where like I'd wake up the next day and I'd realize, oh my God, I blamed myself for this illness for like 6 years. So I'd release that,
Yeah.
so there's all these hidden things that were keeping me, like even last show, I realized that there was a voice inside me that was always telling me no matter what, today was going to be a terrible day.
Yeah.
That's an old thing from being sick. So it's like, I saw that. I was like, okay, now my life is different now. So it's very much feels like I'm climbing a ladder, and each rung of the ladder is some psychological barrier that is telling me or preventing me from being intimate with life or being happy. Right. And so it's like an injury. They call it regression of the ego. So at one point it was like all the healing work that it did was not available anymore. But the teaching, the ultimate teaching, it's actually right here on my wall. The ultimate teaching for me was the essence. I'm going to read it. The essence and final point of the teachings is open-heartedness. So be open-hearted to these difficulties. That's a hard thing to do, since it means letting them be in the original form, which is troublesome to your thoughts of how you think you should be. For some reason, you can't be that person right now, but you still are a person, and he needs to do this practice of loving just how he is. Do you think you can try that? The work of healing the metabolic problems will go on, but the spiritual work can be done at the highest level right now, just as you are.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Isn't that interesting? That part in particular is also like, and I don't know where I stand with these groups. I guess I've been to them. I haven't gotten much out of them, but this is like that's a sobriety thing too. Is like acceptance of what you've done, acceptance of who you are, understanding that human beings are fallible and make really like gut wrenching mistakes. But the only thing that you can do to move forward is acceptance. And that. Like, I mean, there's
that gives you a ground to push off of again.
Yeah.
If you're not accepting it, you're doing something else, and you can no longer be creative in your life. You can't grow.
Well, and you're denying it. You're if you're not accepting it, you're denying it, and therefore you can't even launch from a place of truth. Right. So anything you build on that is building on a foundation of sand that can topple over if the truth came out.
Exactly.
That's
exactly right.
So you might as well just fucking completely get all of it out there, put everything on the table, and hopefully build something strong from that. Yeah.
And speaking of acceptance, what I've learned, the teachings that I'm going through, that I just went through, that I went through originally in the 4-year program of the school, and what I continue to learn from the teachings, it's a transmission, meaning it's not just the words, there's nourishment in them actually being present with somebody that's like, that knows how to take care of himself. Anyway, what I'm learning is that the main practice of non-duality, it's like, how can you be with things in your life? How can you be with yourself, others, and anything in the world free of conceptualizations, free of psychological transference? But it has to include all of that, because we can't deny that these things exist. So you have to like ride these waves of transference. You have to understand all of the ways that you're trying to freeze something into what it was before, rather than being open to what it is now, which is really hard to do, right? But what I found is that if you can do that, if you can let life be in its original form without trying to change it, whatever, something amazing actually happens, and you start to participate in the healing of the world. And it's very exciting for me, because I've gotten like tastes of it, where I realize, like, oh my God, I'm with this thing just as it is, and it starts to glow, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm healing here.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny because I look at it like that. It's so much of being a comedian is like cynicism and looking at things and calling them gay or just ridiculous or just whatever, in that kind of way. So it's hard for me to like even sincerely take this stuff in. Yeah. But that's also something that I've been working on, is truly just like allowing myself acceptance, allowing myself to push through any kind of discomfort, acknowledging, wrongdoings. I mean, all that stuff. I remember there were periods where I was mad at you. Definitely mad at you. And then I didn't understand, and I didn't know what our friendship was, and I thought you were abandoning me. Yes. And like I wasn't sure what I just thought you were telling me you were sick and then living a life in like some bog with a bunch of fucking
I remember exactly that, and it broke my heart, because I felt I was like, wow, there's a miss here. Like what I'm presenting to the world is not lining up with how sick I am.
Well, and it wasn't just that. It was me going through other shit as well, simultaneously.
Yeah.
That I obviously didn't have any kind of illness. I have mental illness, but I didn't have any like physical illness. But whatever we were each simultaneously going through kind of didn't allow us to connect at that time, and probably for the better. Maybe if we were, then we wouldn't be tight again right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all of this ebbs and flows and kind of in the way it should, I guess.
And, you know, it's just, first of all, I'm so grateful for this friendship and being tight with you again.
Yeah.
But just to go back to that moment, I remember it was a picture that I posted of all of us camping or something like that. And you were like, what the fuck? And I remember like, I was pushing myself so far past like what I could do. Anyway, the point was, I guess we don't need to rehash it. I'm glad that you said that. And, we can just totally move on. It's, yeah, it's great. It's a good thing.
No, 100%. But I think this is like completely informative for people, and I'm enjoying just hearing about it as well because, you know, a lot of this has been like, I've been going through a lot. I don't want to talk about it. Let's push forward. So it's like I totally get that too, because I wouldn't want to live in that same bullshit that you've just made it through either. But yeah, it's interesting to hear about.
You know, as I'm listening to you, it's hard to do this while we are like podcasting.
Yeah.
You know, but when I listen to you, I can also, because I do healing work all the time, I could feel that there's a place inside you, right? Where there's a place where you still haven't actually given yourself like this kindness or this compassion to be able to take in certain, it's like, you know,
totally. I can't even sing to myself in the car.
But it's also,
I can't let go to music anymore. I've destroyed any semblance of like just like complete like let it go joy, anything like that. It's brutal.
You know, I think so. And I used to giggle and make fun of spiritual people or people that were like working on themselves on that level until my first weekend at the school when I met my teacher and I experienced a level of compassion that I couldn't explain. The way she talked, the way she related to people, I said in that moment, I'm all in, and I asked her, I said, how did you become how you are as a person? And she said, I've been doing this work for 22 years. I said, well, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you teach it? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm going to teach this work. And I stuck with it, you know, and it's so cool that I can announce that I'm teaching the 4-year program next June.
Oh, that's fucking great.
But it's starting.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Wait, is that
that
was terrible. That's the first one. That's your first solo.
This is my first. It's actually, I don't have permission to do it solo. I'm allowed to teach. So I'm like a new bottle of wine.
Yeah, you're tandem.
And I'm teaching with a fine bottle of wine.
Oh, nice.
You know, like an aged one that really knows. So her name's Beth Almarini. She's wonderful. She really loves this work and she gets it. And the reason why I love working for her, she's Italian. Yeah. Oh yeah. And the reason I love working for her is because she's really grounded in the non-dual approach. I still get excited and I want to teach. I want to pour myself into anybody that's willing to listen. And I'm like, do you get it? Oh, here's what it's actually doing. Here's all the other information, and let's move you right along to the awakening that I know is coming. And so I still get a little excited. And she's very like, no, like just do the meditation and what happens. And if they don't say anything, she doesn't say anything, and she just lets it be what it is. And I'm like, fuck.
That sounds very young comic, seasoned comic.
Yes.
Like it does. Like somebody that, I mean, it's not that I don't get excited for certain things, but even I just got to open for Chris DiStefano at Radio City, which was fucking
Can we talk about that? Do we have time?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But like speaking about like, you know, young comic versus old comic thing, when I first started, there were several times throughout the beginning of my career where I probably thought I was ready for that, where I probably thought I could do it. And if I were given the opportunity, I would have been so excited. I would have been anxious. I would have built it up in my head.
Yeah.
Who knows how it would have gone. In this particular thing, I don't know how or why it happened, but a perfect storm of ambivalence hit me to where I didn't realize that this was a big deal until after I was off stage. Like after I was done.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when I walked out there and I told you, it felt like I was in a loincloth with a spear and I was being sent into some sort of like Coliseum to fight the aliens to protect Earth.
Uh-huh.
Like that's what it looked like. It's just a vast, black, almost infinite space thing. And I'm used to walking on comedy club stages where it's like 8 inches raised off the ground. People don't respect you. They're eating chicken wings. They don't give a fuck about what you're doing. But as soon as you walk out, talk about history, talk about like a psychedelic feeling. Like you can feel the fucking ghosts of past performers, of people that have sat there and watched. This comic that I spoke to after was just like, hey man, just understand that like in the world, like the amount of comedians that have performed on that stage could fit in your fist. He's like, so for the rest of your life, you're a member of an elite group that got to sit on that stand on that stage, tell jokes, and he's like, so fuck everybody.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I love everything you just said. That's the best. But it dawned on me there where it's like, yeah, man. I mean, that's where like the Biggie Smalls fucking Suge Knight, like everybody want to, executive producer, won't be all up in your videos, dancing, come to death row. And then Biggie being like, we're Brooklyn. That whole thing happened fucking there. All these things have happened there. Some of my favorite comedians, some of my favorite rock bands, Fish played like these insane, like Bobby Griffin actually sent me the, I forget what song it was, but it's my phone is recording this, but it's like a famous Ghost Fish song where they played like a 30-minute rendition of this song, and the way that they meander through it and meet together, and it's like this musical, like unbelievable. You can't believe can't believe that people can like independently and collectively work that well.
Yeah,
it's just unbelievable. So it just like I'm grateful that I somehow tricked myself into having complete zen leading up to this, where it's because I'm 15 years in. I'm not a fucking young comic anymore. I'm legitimately, if I knew myself when I started 15 years in, where I perform, what I do, the podcast, all that stuff, I would look up to myself. Like I would.
Yeah.
I would be one of the comics where I was like, oh, this guy's good. He's been doing it for a while, whatever. So I have to constantly think in that way of like almost comparing myself young to myself now, and I'm grateful that I've been through the process of ego shattering, disappointments, successes, whatever, to kind of just be able to approach it as evenly as possible.
Yeah. Well, nobody can say that you haven't put the work in.
Right.
I mean, you are just a hard worker. Every time.
Sports, man.
Yeah,
I credit fucking sports.
I remember it was like last year or something. You said that in passing that you credit sports, and it woke me up. It made me remember. I was like, oh yeah, sports.
Yeah,
I was like, it was like the Lion King. Remember.
Yeah.
Remember.
What we've put our bodies
to.
What we've pushed our body to.
Yeah.
The limit. The whatever.
God, I loved it, man. 3 days. Let's go 3 days. Let's hit the gym after 3. Let's go till midnight. Open up the gym, Mr. Keith, because I'm doing 4 days because I'm the fucking captain and I'm the fucking man.
Yeah, man.
Like it was like, oh, so good.
It's the best. And even like, I don't know, I look at it, I look at sports from that way, right? Like when I talk about glory days, I try not to like talk about like specific shots or moments or whatever. When I talk about sports glory days, I mean the spiritual element.
The training.
The training, the pushing yourself to the limit, the seeing what you got under the hood, the seeing how far past your limit you can go, the seeing like if you were a bitch sometimes, if you were not, all that stuff, how you could also, I wish I was better at accepting a role and not having so much of an ego about it. I wish that it was maybe delivered to me in a way that was palatable and I could have understood it better. But like now, especially watching basketball and watching all these different things, I have such a greater understanding of the components and how they work together that I wish like I had a coach that had any of that understanding growing up.
I know.
But it's those things that like have more or less shaped how I approach pretty much everything in my life.
Yes. And how could it not, right? You put so much work in.
Yeah.
And so I'm like deeply grateful for playing sports and all that kind of stuff.
Same.
There was a time, this is before I even knew I was spiritual. I loved football so much. I remember we were doing just kind of like wind sprints in the summer and we were all puking. You know what I mean? And it was just like because nobody taught us nutrition. So I probably had like 2 bacon, egg, and cheeses right before.
We had a super strum league.
We're like
middle of fucking
super Bowl and like 2 slices of white. It was like 140 grams of saturated fat.
Dude, I remember Kevin, will redact last name for reasons, and I remember him running and him being like, fuck you, Coach Butler, I'm not running anymore, fuck you. And Coach is like, run, and Kevin's just like through his face mask, and it was like General Joe's chicken flying through his
Like there was so many holes in like like their leaders. Like there was nobody that really had put any of the
told
pieces
us we
together.
should eat healthy.
I, as a sophomore, created the weightlifting program for Tappan Zee High School, and I. Like coach looked at it and he's like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You know what it was? It was like 40 workouts for each muscle group. Cause I was like, I'm insane. I'm just going to, I wouldn't go to school and I just worked out.
Yeah.
It was the
was
best.
the best.
Cook steaks, drink some milk, and then go squat till you puked.
Chug milk.
I remember we used to work out so hard. There are times we do the squats, 20 squats with like 225. That was like when we were training for college.
God.
Just do steps because I remember my brother went to Villanova and he pitched there for like a little while, and he said their practice was squatting 225 sets of 20. So I was like, I'm gonna do that. So me, Justin, and James Mills would go there together. We'd cut school, do the steaks, do the milk, and then we'd go to Body Quest gym, and we'd squat so hard that I remember I'd be falling asleep because it was so exhausted. I'd be sitting on the bench like this, waiting for so James would be spotting Justin, and it'd be my turn to sit down. We had an agreement where when it was your turn to go, you'd slap the person in the face to wake them up, and then you'd go squat. You don't even have to, like, tell me who's outworking us now. Nobody could ever outwork us, and my body, my freshman year in college, just broke in half. I wonder why.
Well, each slap was a mini concussion, which ultimately progressed your illness.
Can we talk about? Remember, we said this maybe a couple weeks ago when we realized we had the same injury in school that gave us a concussion. Can we just mention that?
Yeah.
It's just a funny story.
Go ahead.
So, down in the pink hallway in Tappan Zee High School, there was like the engineering room.
I forgot it. Okay, yeah, now I remember what you're talking about. Yeah.
So at one point, I think I was taking like Photoshop class or whatever, like how to develop photos, take photos. By the way, I never developed one photo the entire semester. Rob Call did everything for me, and I think he resented me for it. But it was like one of those things where he realized that I was just not paying attention. Yeah. I was playing like a ball game in the pink hallway or something the whole class. Teacher didn't care. But the point was, so one day I was just kind of wandering the class because, again, I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. And there's this kind of machine that had like a bar above it, and it was like all like steel like below it. And it just kind of looked interesting, you know? So I was like, does this thing come down? Like, how does this work? And it didn't go down. So I just kind of like pushed it like really hard, and it slammed down. And then the other piece of a metal that I didn't know was there came all the way around and smashed me on the bridge of my nose. This is my senior year in high school. I remember it because I was going on my football recruiting trips, and everybody thought that I was the biggest badass in the world because I had a slit from the top, because that's a sign that you're crushing people in football, because the face mask. So that was like, you know, like they were giving me like hundreds of dollars to go hang out and party because they're like, we want Rothschild.
Meanwhile, you're like throwing up in a bush from residual concussion symptoms.
Dude, I remember that thing hit me.
I had the exact same thing happen to me too. And
Tell me.
It was literally the same thing.
The same machine,
this looks
right?
like a cool machine, and just being like, what the fuck, slam it, and me being like embarrassed to tell anybody, seeing complete stars, and then just walking probably home. I
remember this distinctly. I walked up into the cafeteria, and I sat down, and I was like, I'm gonna fall asleep. You know, I was like, that thing hit me so hard, I'm gonna fall asleep. I can't keep my eyes open. So I was like, I gotta get home. So I cut school, I hop in my car, drive home, and I stopped at a stoplight. I put the car in park, and I fell asleep.
Oh my God.
And then I woke up, the car was like beeping behind me, whatever, put it in drive, went home, and I was like, I gave myself a concussion today.
And then fell asleep.
I went home and went to sleep.
Like the worst thing.
Yes, I know, but I couldn't fight it. I couldn't even get home. It was like a 5-minute drive from high school. I couldn't get home.
That's fucking unbelievable.
How are we doing with time?
We're coming to an end.
Damn.
This is great. This is what we do.
Radio City. Tell us.
So I mean, more or less, it was the best. It's everything you think it might be. So the thing that I did, where afterwards I'm in the car, Nicole's in the car, and she's like, it went awesome. I had a fucking great set. I showed up for myself, which is, you know, that's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah.
It's like, go out. I've put in all the work. I let go in the sense of control. What's going to happen is going to happen. got to the mic, immediately made fun of James Mattern, the host. It got something. I start immediately doing great. I'm wearing a Biggie Smalls pattern shirt that I picked out and I love, but it's like insane for me to wear that on stage. It's like not what I typically wear, like flashy shit.
Yeah.
And I caught a glimpse of myself in the giant monitor next to the stage so the back 6,000 can fucking see. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, instantly just started making fun of myself like I was at a club. Like, I was just feeling that much in the moment and that much a part of what was happening, where it wasn't like, it wasn't rote, it wasn't me delivering a monologue, it was me in the fucking moment performing for 6,000 people.
It's amazing.
And just even that, like, acknowledgement, boom, brought it to another level, and then another level. And it's like these bits that I'm like, I opened with a joke I wrote 3 weeks ago. And I've just been doing on stage, and I was like, it's been doing great, and it's since been worked out, obviously, but 3 weeks, that's not a long shelf life for a joke, and not a lot of practice, especially to tell in a room full of with that many people. And I was just like, man, that's so cool that I like thought of something 3 weeks ago and then delivered it for this many people later.
Hell yeah.
And then I'm like driving home, you know, it's a great night. It's Chris's accomplishment, obviously. He's the one that sold it out. It's incredible. I'm so fucking proud of what he did, because it was Radio City, and then the next day is Madison Square Garden.
That's where
Theater.
I went. Gina and I went there.
I mean, unbelievable. He did like over 11,000 tickets in a weekend. He's doing like 2 of the most iconic venues there is in his city. It's like, that's fucking unbelievable. So I'm not taking the accomplishment. It is his. I'm grateful to be along for the ride. But there is part of me where it's like, I remember writing jokes in Geneseo during humanities class with the idea of starting stand-up comedy. So I put myself back in that position, the idea of starting it, and me writing about dingy strip clubs or whatever, pissing and shitting or whatever awful nonsense I was writing about. And that gave me like a real moment of just like, fuck, dude, from an idea came something. This started as an idea. Same as that joke that I opened with. This whole fucking thing started as, I think I'll do that. And now I'm performing at a place where if I told that kid, he would have shit blood. Like, it's what? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? I told my dad, and he's like Radio City, man. Radio City. And my dad is not impressed by anything I do. So the idea where he was like, fucking Radio City, motherfucker. I was like, yeah, like, okay. I was like, yes, that is a big deal.
What a level up. It's like you step into just a larger version of yourself, and now that's where you are. No one can take you. No one can take it away, because you did it. You crushed.
Oh, and then the next day, this is comedy, and this is why I love fucking comedy, is because 6,000 people I'm destroying, having the greatest set, greatest night ever. The next night I have 4 shows. First one is in an apartment. And you know, it's for 70 people in a $15 million penthouse. It was an insane apartment. But like, that's what it is, dude. It's that to a fucking apartment. Then I'm at New York Comedy Club. Then I'm at the Cellar for 2 shows. And let's see how this goes in all these different venues. And I had a confidence about me, not in like I did this, like walking around like I'm cool shit, but I had a confidence in me that I haven't had on stage, where I'm like, I can kind of do anything. Like at this point, I feel capable of working any fucking room. I needed that. I always was jealous of certain like pro athletes that like, the moment they win a championship, they're all of a sudden a new player. They all of a sudden have this confidence. They all of a sudden know what they are and who they will be. And like, you know, it's just like a calcified version of themselves. With me, I've reached these levels, and I've always thought that I'm like a fraud and I'm a second away from being found out and then sent back to the minors. But for whatever reason, this moment, I did it, and I was like, I can do that again, and I'm gonna do it next time. Like I want to headline that shit. It gave me a concrete goal, and it gave me confidence where I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's inspiring, man. Because you know, if you can do it, anybody can do it.
That's
you know?
true. That's very true.
No,
from
dude,
the
it's
103rd Street and Amsterdam hostel to
when,
Radio City.
Oh, we didn't listen to that.
Oh, we'll do that next. We'll do that next episode.
Okay.
So I don't know if we did say it, but right now the plan for this show is monthly with an option for more. So this is definitely going to be a once-a-month thing. We each have our own individual projects and stuff that we're going to be off doing. So to make this as stress-free as possible and for a continued fun thing, that's where it's going to be. Probably going to be a bit more frequent, but right now It's monthly. And yeah, if you want to ask us questions, do you have an email that they can send it to?
Yeah, the Third Thing Network at gmail.com.
Yeah.
It's all spelled out. So third is not the number. It's the Third Thing Network at gmail.com.
Yeah, and that'll be in the episode description and all that stuff.
Yeah, cool.
My DMs are open. Tim's DMs are open as well.
We have an MATVE pod at gmail.com. Let me see if I still have it.
We sure do, yeah.
Let me check, because that might be the better one then.
Yeah, either way, the proper email will be in the description of this episode.
Right.
Both of our DMs are open. Tim probably checks his the least. I can't get away from it. But yeah,
we're out of time.
I know.
How much time do we have?
Let's literally promote. 1 minute.
Okay, let's promote real quick. Okay, so listen, I'm going to be at Off the Grid Camp Out. It's a really cool festival. Use code Tim Rothschild, all lowercase, to get 15% off. Let's see, if you want to get married, let me know. There's a small fee, and I'll do it.
That's right.
There's the 4-year program starting in June. If you're interested at all, talk to me about it. We're doing intro to non-dual Kabbalistic healing courses every 6 weeks, basically, and we've had a great turnout. Like we have 15 people each class, so it looks like we're definitely going to be doing the 4-year program next year. We're still figuring out the venue, but all that is there. So go to thethirdthingnetwork.com, find all my stuff there, and sign up. We have scholarships, so you pay what you want, and we'll meet you there. We just want to share this work and get you excited about it.
Spread the word.
And do healings with me. That's how I raise my daughter. Please.
And for everything me, MikeCannonComedy.com. I'm all over the road. Some fun new podcast announcements coming up as well for yours truly. For those of you who follow, Here's a Scenario is now going to be ending. You know that because we announced it on our show. And there's some exciting stuff on the horizon. But this is exciting. I'm happy to be here. And let's smoke a blunt.
Hell yeah.